Hey there guys, Exxz here, and in today's video we'll be taking a look at all of the major differences between Vanilla WoW and current WoW, so if you want to know more, stick around. And let's start the video by talking about the items themselves. A lot of the items in Vanilla were actually quite bad. Essence of the Pure Flame, Shadow Strike, the Lion Horn of Stormwind, Spire of the Stone Shaper, just to name a few. And all of those items were actually rare or epic quality, and to be fair, I wouldn't even give them the status of an uncommon item, let alone rare or epic. And just to give you an example of how bad they were, Spire of the Stone Shaper was a staff that had an on-use effect. You could use it to increase your armor by 1000 for 10 seconds, but during those 10 seconds, you couldn't cast spells or attack. Why would I want that? And a lot of the classes actually suffered because of it, because there was just not enough good items for certain classes, and it wasn't uncommon to see paladins run around in cloth gear and so on. You as a player were actually quite weaker than you are in current WoW. All of the mobs in general were a lot stronger. Oh, you pulled 2 or 3 mobs? I'm sorry man, you're dead. That meant that after killing a few mobs, you would actually have to stop and eat up and drink up because you were out of health and out of mana. Actually, a lot of the time leveling is spent just by drinking and replenishing your health and mana, and also by traveling from point A to point B. Now, let's talk about endgame PvE. Vanilla raids are considered to be one of the hardest in the game. I mean, Naxxramas was cleared only by a handful of guilds, and even to this day it is considered to be one of the hardest raids in the game. And raids took a lot of time and patience. The raids themselves not that much, but the whole preparation process, oh boy. So say you decide to raid as a rogue. There is an actual list of 15 items that are mandatory for each and every raid that you're going to attend. So 15 mandatory items, not to mention all of the optional items that you can also bring to a raid that's going to help you boost your survivability and your success in the raid overall. Today you bring what, like 3 items? 4 at best, your flask, your food, your potion, and your rune. That's it. And speaking of raids, there was only one raid difficulty. None of that looking for raid, normal, heroic, and mythic difficulties. No, there was only one difficulty, and you would do it. That's the only thing that you could do. A lot of the raids actually required you to get certain pieces of resistance gear, fire resistance, nature resistance, frost resistance. It wasn't an uncommon thing back then. Today, there is no resistances. All of the raids in Vanilla were 40-man raids, apart from Zul'Gurub and Ruins of Ahn'Qiraj, which were designed as 20-man raids, which were sort of a catch-up mechanic, if you will. That meant that you had to gather 40 people that would be willing to log on at a certain time of day or night and actually organize them into a proper raid. And you could imagine how hard that could have actually been. People struggle today with 20-man groups, let alone 40 people. Next, let's talk about your server reputation. There was no cross-realm or cross-server BGs back then. That meant that, like it or not, people on your realm actually got to know you. And you have developed this sort of reputation on what you actually did and how you acted. So let's say you were AFK in some of the dungeons, say that you ninja'd a few items. People are going to remember your name and they're actually going to spread the word, and the next time that you will be looking for a group, you might not get invited just because you were AFK or because you ninja'd a few items. So in general, servers were these small communities that actually got to know each other really well, and depending on how you acted in those small communities, you would either be successful or not. And in order to be successful, you're going to need the help of other players. Classic WoW isn't designed as this solo experience. You're going to actually need help from a lot of players in a lot of situations. There isn't really that much stuff that you can do solo. The game itself was a lot harder. Things took time. One of the extreme examples being Scepter of the Shifting Sands quest chain. In one part of that quest, you are required to farm 42,000 Silithid Carpice fragments. Yeah, that's right, 42,000. Could you imagine farming all of that yourself? No way. So you see, you are going to need help from other players. And because of that, you definitely don't want to AFK the dungeons or ninja some items, because in the long run, you're going to have much more benefits if you behave yourself and actually play like you're supposed to play. If you plan on raiding in Classic WoW, you have to keep in mind that a lot of the specs aren't really viable for raids. Balanced Druids, Retribution Paladins, Subtlety Rogue, Elemental Shaman, I mean, they just weren't good enough. And that's just to name a few. There were a lot more specs that weren't really viable. Balancing back then really wasn't the thing, and some of the classes suffered more than the rest. In vanilla, there was no looking for dungeon system. You would have to spam the trade chat in order to either find people for your group or to find the group yourself. There also weren't any summoning stone in front of the dungeons or raids for that matter, and if you didn't have a warlock in your group, then all of you would have to run to the actual entrance of the instance. If you wanted to mail some items to your friends or to an alt maybe, you would have to send each and every item individually, because back then you could only send one item at a time. Today you can send a batch of items in one mail, but back then it wasn't the case. A lot of the spells and abilities actually required materials in order to be cast. You want to set up a camping fire in order to cook some food? Well, not without wood. You want to cast Vanish as a rogue? Well, you won't without the flash powder. And if you wanted to open up a portal as a mage, you could do so, but only if you had runes in your bag. In vanilla, both Alliance and the Horde had separate auction houses. That meant if you were playing Horde and an Alliance character posted something on the auction house, you couldn't buy it. You could only buy stuff off of Horde characters. Nowadays, everything is connected. Whether you're a Horde character or an Alliance character, you can still buy everything from the auction house, regardless of who posted it. But back then, you could only do so in the Gadgets and auction house, which is the only auction house where both Alliance and the Horde characters could post their items. Which about wraps it up for today's video. So to sum it all up, a lot of the items had random stats. You as a player were a lot weaker. There was only one difficulty when it comes to raiding and dungeons. All of the raids were 40 man, and your server reputation actually mattered. There was a lot less quality of life features. The game itself was a lot harder, and a lot of the things that you actually did in the game required a lot of time. And groups had to be formed manually. And that brings us to the end of this video. If you liked what you saw, remember to hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.